Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have a great show for you today. First, we have a verdict in the Richard Allen trial. That's right, the Delphi case. Guilty. A man wanted for murder in Tennessee has been arrested in South Carolina. A California man is sentenced for killing his 51-year-old neighbor who is holding his 11-month-old grandchild. A death penalty case collapses down in Florida because of a judge's alleged unethical conduct. A Daniel Penny trial update. Why is this case even continuing? This day in legal history and our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do. Leave me a comment below, and remember, you can check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps. And hit that little bell for notifications of when we go live or put up new content. All right, it is November 11th, 2024. It is Veterans Day. So, for all those who have served, thank you for your service. And yesterday was the Marine Corps birthday, so happy birthday, Marines. 249 years. But before we get to the top story, go to crimetalksearch.com. Sign up for that background subscription service. You can do a background search on anyone here in the United States. You can do as many searches as you desire. Go to crimetalksearch.com. You're going to be happy that you did. All right, let's go ahead and open the docket. Today is November 11th. It is Veterans Day. So happy Veterans Day to all those who have served. You took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And you said, hey, if there is trouble and your country needs you, you said, I will go first. Now it's becoming harder and harder to find people willing to do that in today's America, unfortunately. And only 2% of the United States population has ever served in the armed forces. So pretty elite group indeed. All right, top story today. That's right, Richard Allen guilty. Turns out the jury believes he is the bridge guy. Now, for those who are not familiar with this, Richard Allen was accused of the murders of 14-year-old Abigail Abby Williams and 13-year-old Liberty Libby German, who disappeared back on 13th of February of 2017 while hiking along the Monon High Bridge there in Delphi, Indiana. Their bodies were discovered by the search team the following day in a wooded area, and the jury began their deliberations on Thursday afternoon of last week following closing arguments and continued until shortly after 3:30 p.m. They resumed Friday morning at 9 a.m. and deliberated until about 4 p.m., and they were unable to reach a verdict. On Saturday, they convened for several more hours, pushing the total deliberations ultimately to about 18 hours until they'd ultimately reached their decision. And yes, he was found, Richard Allen was found guilty on all counts, all 4 counts. He now faces 130 years. Sentencing is set for December 20th of 2024. Now, to a lot of people, this is a complete shock. And to other people, it is not. The jury has spoken. The jury has taken their time to look at the evidence that was presented to them. Now, I know a lot of people that are supporting Richard Allen are going to say, but they didn't even get to present their case. They did not. That will be an appeal issue. And ultimately, the appellate courts will decide if Richard Allen got a fair trial or if he didn't get a fair trial. And if he didn't get a fair trial, guess what? We'll get to do it again. And they'll be able to present their alternate suspect defenses. The defense wanted to present, but Judge Francis C. Gull kept the jury from hearing. So we're going to have to wait and see. But either way, we are talking now 7 years, and there's now justice for Abby Williams and Libby. All right, and Libby German. So after 7 years, we finally have justice for Abby Williams and Libby German. The prosecution proved their case. What do I say all the time here, ladies and gentlemen? It's always the defendant's own words that get them, okay? I was thinking Richard Allen had this case until we started getting word about all of the alleged confessions. Well, the jury now believes they're not alleged confessions. They're believing that they were confessions. The gun itself, the bullet found at the bodies and whether it was cycled through his gun could have dealt with that. They dealt with that, in my opinion. Would have been nicer if they said it wasn't a match, but they didn't. The defense own expert couldn't say it wasn't a match. He said he just didn't agree with the process in which the government experts conducted their evaluation. But when it comes to making statements about killing people, people don't necessarily do that. Even if you are in a state of psychosis, even if you believe you are basically having an emotional breakdown, it's still not good to go around confessing things you didn't necessarily do, because there's always a chance that somebody's going to believe that's what you did. Okay? You just don't go and do it. And I said all along, it's always the defendant's own words that get them. Now, we haven't heard from the jury yet, and we'll see if anybody actually from the jury talks to the press and the public. But the reality of it is my guess, this is a guess at this point because I haven't talked to any of the jurors, that it was those statements. People just don't talk about things like that and not expect people, when you say it enough times, to generally believe it. You weren't in this total state of psychosis the entire time, so to speak. Maybe a potential appellate issue, but like I said, Richard Allen, guilty on all counts. Now, certainly we'll be talking about this tomorrow night when we go live at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Please join us. Next, a man wanted for murder after making a fake 911 call claiming to be a distressed hiker was arrested Sunday in South Carolina. The Monroe County, Tennessee Sheriff's Office said that Nicholas Wayne Hamlet was taken into custody at a hospital in Columbia, South Carolina, after his fingerprints identified who he actually was. Now, Mr. Hamlet was charged with murder earlier in this month after he allegedly made a 911 call in Tennessee on October 18th, claiming to be Ben Andrade, and saying that he fell off a cliff while being chased by a bear. When search and rescue crews found Andrade, he was in fact deceased, and an autopsy determined that the man died from blunt force trauma. Well, investigators quickly learned that Brian Andrade's identification found on the dead man was not his, and that the ID had been stolen and used by Mr. Hamlet, who it turned out has a lengthy history of stealing identification, and he did it by attacking the victim. Now, the Monroe County investigators traced the phone used to make the fake 911 call and spoke with a man they believed to be Mr. Hamlet at a home in Knoxville. And although he used a fake name and was gone by the time the police arrived at the home, they were curious. Police later identified the dead man as 34-year-old Stephen Lloyd. The sheriff's office said that Hamlet met Lloyd and lured him into the woods to kill him and steal his identity. Now, in the coming weeks, Hamlet was spotted in the Columbia, South Carolina area, but investigators were not able to find his exact location and take him into custody until he was recognized at the hospital over the weekend. You got to love it, ladies and gentlemen. You got to love it. Some good old-fashioned police work, observant people at the hospital saying, hey, we've seen this guy. I've seen him on TV. A California man who was cleaning his gun and it went off, and ultimately the bullet went through a wall, killing his neighbor who was holding his 11-month-old granddaughter. Well, he has finally learned his fate. An accused killer's plea deal raised questions with the court last Friday, as the judge said he was no longer comfortable with the prison sentence he once indicated he would give. Well, Kevin King, the man being sentenced, ultimately received 5 years and 4 months in state prison for the death of Victor Becerra. Now, the defendant will be credited for his 960 days he's already been serving in custody, meaning he'll serve another 2.5 years behind bars. Now, he pled no contest to involuntary manslaughter and having an assault weapon as part of a plea deal earlier this year. Now, he was convicted of a felony prohibiting from having a firearm in the future, which is oftentimes the goal of the prosecutors. If you do dumb things with guns, they want to make sure you don't have the opportunity to do dumb things again with guns. Anyway, the court had indicated, both the attorneys in the case, that it was not comfortable with it, the disposition, and that he was going to be withdrawing its indicated sentence. So as I noted, Kevin King was charged with the killing of Victor Becerra, who was holding his grandchild when a bullet pierced through the wall and hit him in this neighborhood complex in Fresno, California. Now, King was living next door when investigators say he shot his gun inside, sending a single bullet flying through a shared community wall. And the accused plea deal raised some questions as to whether the judge would go along with it, but ultimately he did. This is a pretty good disposition for actually killing somebody, whether recklessly or negligently. I think this is more reckless conduct because, that's right, Mr. King said that he was cleaning his firearm when the gun went off, which means that, there was a round in the chamber and he apparently didn't realize it. Stupid. It's always the negligent ones that ruin it for everybody else in this particular case, and on this case, ultimately killed somebody as well. Next, a Miami gang leader's case is falling apart because of some alleged unethical conduct by a judge. So an appellate judge at the center of one of Miami's biggest criminal cases is facing intense scrutiny after some text messages were released showing her pressuring the Miami-Dade state attorney, Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, about how to handle the case. She was denigrating defense attorneys and bad-mouthing local judges. Now, the text messages sent by Braun Miller, who rose from prosecutor to circuit judge to her current position on the 3rd District Court of Appeals, were partly meant to protect her reputation. She worried it was being tarnished in hearings to reconsider the capital murder conviction that she obtained some 20 years ago against Corey Smith. He was a reputed violent drug leader of the John Doe gang of Liberty City. Now, Miller's handling of the case back in 2004 is at issue now, and she is the state's witness as Smith attempts to avoid the death penalty. And with the prosecution's handling of the case under fire, the state attorney's office announced Sunday that it'll waive the death penalty and will attempt to negotiate a lesser sentence. Why? Well, Miller's text messages show a close relationship with the Miami-Dade elected state attorney and a low regard for the judges overseeing the case and the defense attorneys in general. Now, though she left the state attorney's office about 20 years ago, the texting reveals a familiarity allowing Miller to browbeat Fernandez-Rundle and second-guess how she runs the office. And then after some unfavorable court rulings in the Smith case, Miller urged the prosecutor to have the circuit judge Andrea Ricker Wolfson removed from the case and replaced with a different judge. Now, Wolfson on March 7th removed 2 of the prosecutors handling the case, citing misconduct. Quote, "I think you should disqualify her," end quote. Miller wrote to Fernandez, the prosecutor, on April 6th, appearing to refer to Wolfson. Then all rulings can be reconsidered, the appellate judge suggested. In another text, Miller told Fernandez-Rundle that the root of her problem is Michael von Zampt, one of the prosecutors removed by Wolfson. Miller pointed out he is a former defense attorney and criticized Fernandez-Rundle for allowing him to train young prosecutors in the office. They play by different rules, she wrote. No defense attorney should be training assistant state attorneys. It should be someone who knows that prosecutors are held to a higher ethics. Now, the judge, an appointee to the court that handles civil and criminal appeals from the Miami-Dade County, the Judge Miller declined to comment on the messages, and in an email Saturday, she said her decision not to comment was based upon advice of an ethics attorney, stating, quote, "The ethics attorney has recommended that I don't make any public comments at this time, as it might affect the pending proceedings." She says that she strives always to adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct. Anyway, like I said, the text messages sent to and from Miller and Fernandez-Rundle between January and July were obtained by a local newspaper down there in Florida, and they were submitted by the state attorney's office that afternoon as discovery in the Smith case after a September 17th request by the newspaper for texts that led prosecutors to pull and review them. Now, still, the office has refused to release all of the text messages, saying Miller's attorney, former state prosecutor Matt Baldwin, planned to seek a protective order sealing the texts from release to the general public. By then, unfortunately, they had, for the prosecutors, been already circulating around the legal community for several hours. In a statement on Sunday, the state attorney's office said Miller spoke to prosecutors and sent occasional and brief texts to state attorneys in pursuit of the truth as she prepared to give testimony. Fernandez-Rundle, as a matter of course, is personally briefed and engaged in the decision-making on all major cases prosecuted by her office, and specifically those involving the death penalty. The office did not comment on the content of the text exchange, and attorneys involved in the Miami-Dade courts expressed shock about their content, saying the text messages suggest that the judge maybe can't be a fair arbiter on appeals. The defense bar saying the Judge Miller has called into question her fitness to serve the people of the state of Florida and called into doubt every case that she has had come before her in the last 2 decades. The consequences of these messages will be substantial and have reverberations across the entire community and the state. And it's unclear whether Miller violated judicial canons or laws. And as the Smith proceedings continue, Miller holds 3 roles, making her uniquely situated. She was the prosecutor, she's a state witness, and she's a judge. But lawyers who reviewed the text messages, but obviously these text messages reflect poorly upon the Judge Miller. And needless to say, the Florida Bar Association, the criminal defense bar, is quite disappointed, and we'll see what is going to happen from there. Once again, it's always somebody's own words that gets them in the end. Less is more. Say less, listen more, particularly when you're a judge. You can't have those conversations. You just can't. And if she's a state witness, they need to be done with the attorney so that they're preparing and they don't have to turn over that information unless it's exculpatory. But she shouldn't have been making those statements, particularly derogatory statements about other judges. Very not very classy judge. Next, the Daniel Penny case, an update. So nearly every witness who's testified in the trial of Daniel Perry has said that they were afraid of Jordan Neely as he threatened passengers on the New York subway last year. Now, after Neely allegedly threatened passengers, Mr. Penny, who was then 26 and a former Marine, placed him in chokehold to get him to stop. Now, Neely died following the chokehold, and Penny faces up to 15 years in prison if he's convicted of manslaughter, or 4 years if he's convicted of the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide. Now, multiple witnesses testified last Friday saying that they were afraid of Neely following the similar testimony from witnesses testifying earlier in the week. Jurors were also shown multiple recordings showing Neely unresponsive in the subway car. And in one recording from a police body cam, Althea Gittins recalls that she heard Neely saying prior to Penny's intervention, she said, quote, "I heard the young man that's on the floor saying, hey, I'm willing to die. I'll do anything. I'll go to jail. I don't care. I don't care," is what Miss Gittins testified to on that recording. Now, Gittins testified on Friday that she thanked Mr. Penny for his actions. The guy in the tan took him down very respectfully and just held him. He just held him, she said. Yeah, he just held him. He didn't choke him, Gittins told officers in the footage that was played in the courtroom. And 2 other witnesses described their fear of Neely on Friday. A mother on the train who was with a 5-year-old son said she actually took the stroller and put them between them to create a barrier. And on Thursday, 18-year-old Mariela Sanchez testified that Neely began threatening passengers as soon as he entered the subway car on May 1st of 2023. If no one gives him water or food, he's going to start putting hands on people, she testified that Neely was saying on the train. He was going to start attacking, Sanchez explained, that Neely was shouting at everyone in the car but had not touched anyone. Now, another witness, Kadrin Strunk, said that Neely was shouting in the middle of the train, made threatening gestures, smelled like soiled sweatpants, and that she feared he had a gun or a knife, even though she didn't see one and appeared to be unarmed. She also testified that Neely made threatening comments toward the passengers, and this was the first time in her life that she took a moment because she was so scared that she thought that she was actually going to die. Now, even with this testimony, Penny's defense asked for a mistrial, saying that Penny was not getting a fair trial. Now, Penny's defense argued the prosecution was attempting to turn Penny into a white vigilante and allowing witness Johnny Grima, who has a conviction of smashing someone with a baseball bat, to call Penny a murderer, even though Penny isn't even charged being accused of murder. I don't know. I told you this. I try to call balls and strikes, but in this particular case, I'm biased. I just think Daniel Penny should never, ever have been charged. I think it's political in this particular case for that scumbag Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor. I don't like him. I'm telling you that straight up. Take it with a grain of salt, but I don't think Daniel Penny should have been charged, and I hope the jury finds him not guilty. Next, this day in legal history. That's right, the armistice was signed, ending World War I on November 11th, 1918 at 11 a.m. That's right, the Allied powers signed the armistice with Germany, ending World War I, and Armistice Day is marked every year in Europe on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month with 2 minutes of silence. Next, on November 11th, 1991, prosecutors from the United States and the United Kingdom announced their indictment in the bombing of the passenger airplane over Lockerbie, Scotland, and a Scottish court convicted Abdelbassat Ali Mohammed al-Megrahi, allegedly a former Libyan intelligence officer, of the 270 murders in 2001. And going way back, going old school, on November 11th, 1620, 41 pilgrims signed the Mayflower Compact, creating a civil government for the Plymouth colony. And also on November 11th, 1969, the United States government implemented the first draft lottery since World War II to supply soldiers for the Vietnam War. And finally, our dumb criminal of the day. A Florida man has been sentenced to 25 years in prison for stealing the identity of a man in a coma. He pled guilty to more than 20 felony charges. Please meet Donald Wood of Daytona Beach. Now, he stole the comatose man's identity back in 2021 using personal information to take out loans for cars and obviously purchasing many cars. He also hacked into the victim's bank account and tried to refinance his own home with the information that he fraudulently obtained. Now, back in 2022, investigators reportedly started looking into the case and spoke with the victim's family and discovered that the family had been locked out of their bank account and received bills from many financial institutions, including a fake hospital bill for $3,000. Anyway, Mr. Wood was able to accomplish all that and more, applied for a credit in the victim's name in roughly $75,000. And they were able to trace these incidents back to Mr. Wood and found several other victims across the country. Now, Mr. Woods has been arrested back in 2022 for this crime, and now, like I said, pled guilty to organized scheme to defraud over $50,000, 14 counts of fraudulent use of personal identification information of a specified individual, 3 counts of fraudulent use of personal identification information, 2 counts of tampering in felony second-degree proceedings, and mortgage fraud. Yes, Mr. Woods, you are our dumb criminal of the day. Congratulations. That's cold. Not only is that dumb, that's just cold. To steal the identity of someone in coma? I mean, like, at least wait till they're dead, right? I mean, come on. Jeez, that's just cold. And I say that as a joke, all right? It was a joke, ladies and gentlemen. Don't get all upset. Don't break the law like Mr. Woods did. All right, that's all we have for today. Happy Veterans Day. If you got the day off, congratulations. If you're working, hey, that's the way it goes. But remember, the Constitution matters.